In this episode of How Not To, we're going to discuss the red flags in client relationships. Now, this can be anything from mild scope creep to a client that's constantly changing directions on you. We'll talk to you about the warning signs, how to navigate them successfully, and get out the other side. So sit back and hang on, because we're going for another ride.
Oh, Brian, clients. First, we love our clients, but in our history, we've been in business for 22 years. We've had some that have not gone as smoothly as we would have liked for various reasons, and we'll get into some of those throughout this episode. But really, we're talking about red flags, and clients will show you their flags, and if there are the red ones, you can either choose to see them or ignore them at your own peril. And usually from the very first instant, the very first time you connect with them, the signs begin. What's a good place to sort of start this conversation? There are so many places, and what I don't want to do is ramble and kind of go all over the map. So help bring some structure to this, Brian.
Sure, let's start with obvious, then move on to some subtle signs, and then move on to the reason some of these signs exist and how to avoid them. So
Love it.
Let's just start at the beginning, and the beginning is the obvious signs. Somebody is belligerent, constantly second-guessing anything you have to say as you present to them the way you might try to approach the project, and doesn't act like a partner, acts like an adversarial relationship. Easy to spot. The real question, which we'll try to answer later, is, but why does that occur? So when you see these things, you have a choice. You have a choice to either run for the hills or accept it openly, and just know that it will be more of the same as you continue down the road. It's a little bit different when this shifts mid-project. You can start a project and somebody becomes belligerent. So we'll talk about why that may happen. That's a hard one because you start with handshakes and smiles and hugs, and in the middle of it, you're sort of ducking under the table as things are getting thrown. And then the final one is just, none of this shows up till the very, very, very end. Why is that? So let's start with the first. The first is easy. As we said, somebody's belligerent. Doesn't matter where or why. They've shown their colors immediately. And for whatever reason, it's up to you whether you want to deal with that or not. I say bypass. I say it's just not worth the headache. Move on, introduce them to somebody else who might be more suited to deal with them than you are, because gosh knows what it was that set them off from the onset. Could be you, could be home life, who knows. Now let's quickly jump into the second one, where suddenly there's a belligerence, and I'm only talking belligerence right now, a belligerence mid-project, and that can come from a number of places. And if you've been open with your communication, chances are it's not you. Chances are upper manager, middle manager, somebody's breathing down their neck, or suddenly they're taking conflicting information and trying to distill it before getting to you. Unfortunately, you're at the end of the chain. So you have no say, no ability. You just have to accept what's coming. But if you can understand that something shifted, and if you can determine that it's not you, it's so much easier to help them to get to a place of comfort. And that's always our goal. We've seen that. And it's always our goal. It's like something's going on. It's not us because we've been communicating. They've been signing off at every step. What do you do? And it really is about reaching out. Like, is everything okay? What do you need? Has anything changed that we're not aware of? And if they ask why, if it's even a halfway decent relationship, it's easy to say, well, we've just noticed a sort of a tonal shift in the way we communicate back and forth. So how can we make this easier for you?
Mm-hmm.
And very often they'll open up and say, yeah, somebody's breathing down. I have a new boss, new manager. Somebody is requesting X, Y, and Z. Okay. So politically, what do we need to do to make this project easier for you? And suddenly the red flag disappears and becomes a white flag of surrender, where both parties are coming onto the battlefield shaking and moving on together, because it really is a partnership. The third one, not as easy to see, and that's the what I'll call the belligerence at the end of the project, where you've done the project, you've checked in, they've seen draft after draft after draft, or what have you, And you get to the end, and suddenly they change their perspective of what the project was, what it has been. And you can subtly remind them, you've signed off at each phase. What has changed? What has changed? There's always something.
Hmm.
The ones who really see you as a partner will eventually open up and tell you, well, now we have other stakeholders that suddenly got involved last minute. And
Hmm.
depending on how you structure your company and structure your productions, you can actually help that and accommodate for that and make changes. You can't do wholesale changes, but you can change maybe the direction the message is going.
Hmm.
It's about the relationship and what you want to put up with. And not only that, what it started as. The relationship that didn't start in a teamwork manner will never end in a teamwork manner.
No,
The
it
ones
won't.
that do start that way can be altered as long as they see and trust you. If they trust you, and we've had no problem with this, of getting people to talk about why the shift, what's changing, what do we need to know, what politically might be going on behind the scenes, you get all sorts of answers. And it's easy to avoid any other red flags that are coming up. I would say you
Mm.
actually remove the red flag. So that's all of that is concept number one. The red flag because of belligerence, and gosh knows where that comes from. There are other
Yeah.
red flags we'll get to, but that to me is sort of the hierarchy of what I'd call belligerent response. And
Yeah.
it sounds a lot colder than it is. It's not really. It's they're responding to something, and it's not necessarily you.
Yeah, and I did thank you for saying that because there were a couple of things that I picked up on as you were saying thank you because that's a really great explanation of what this is and right away some of the things that you should be looking for. I want to qualify the word belligerent for those who are watching because many times belligerent, when someone says he was belligerent or she was belligerent, it can bring up these images of someone like charging, breaking down a door, charging in a room with a hammer, or verbal hammers, that kind of thing, and just a lot of yelling and and like a very very aggravated, angry place. And it's not always that. Belligerence is really
No.
more of the conflict of saying there's something negative that's happening here. You mentioned tonal shifts. Things have changed in the niceties maybe, or things are sent to you in a more direct tone. Sometimes it's subtle little things that bring up that idea of belligerence. The other one that you said is, as you start asking questions and you realize what's happening on the other side, that's a nod to the communication, which is part of what we're going to be talking about in terms of how to avoid the red flags and how to perhaps even get out of those situations, which all comes down to communication and the questions that you ask. The more you can dig and the more you can find. But I just wanted to make sure that belligerent, if I was seeing it the same way, because in our 22 years, we've had both. We actually had someone on the belligerent side who made one of our sales persons, he came back in tears because this person just did not know how to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a really bad situation. And
Yep.
we dealt with that very swiftly in a great way that was good for our staff to see as well. And then there are the ones that perhaps I remember those moments when there was a complete shift in the tone. And when we begin to find out, or maybe we saw a headline that someone new was hired, and suddenly there were, either staff changes were happening, and suddenly everything was changing within that. Those are things that are beyond your control, but you can control the outcome
Mm-hmm.
if you recognize what's going on. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So as we look at that, and some things are out of your control, but then even in those situations, how you control what happens from that point forward to the end of the conclusion of the project is really what matters the most in that situation. So as we talk about this idea of the red flags, what are some and what are some things that lead to it? And I want to touch upon something too. And perhaps after this question, I want to ask a little bit about some of the little signs that you might see right from the very first email. But let's go to the other side. What are some things that lead to the problem that maybe we're not seeing right away?
Well, we talked about what I call the belligerence, which is a red flag. There's one other red flag that sort of ties into this, and both have similar traits to them, and that is a chaotic shift in direction. And sometimes it comes at the beginning, sometimes it comes at the middle, sometimes it comes after delivery. Most of these things are because something is happening on the corporate level. And it could be anything from sales were down and now they're working on product launch V3, which you're not informed of because they haven't rolled it out to anyone and they were not given permission to discuss it. Part of it could be a new manager, management team, marketing director. When they're not vested at the beginning of the project and they come in the 11th hour, there's a whole different playbook that gets thrown down. And it's kind of not fair. It's not fair for anybody who's been working on the project, including the team members at that corporation, because what it does is it changes everything. That adds a lot of stress. So stress is part of it. Humility is part of it. It's really hard to remain humble to two different, I'll call it opposing views. Maybe that person had the view that the project was worked through, and then somebody comes in and wants to see a totally different direction. They want to put their stamp on it. Well, this person now has a choice. Do they side with them or do they side with you as the vendor? Most of the times they're going to side with their in-house team, and that makes sense. It's preservation of life. It's how you maintain your job in a tight competitive market. You don't want to be swept away with the suds down the drain. So we get that. These signs all originate from the same thing. Stress that wasn't there initially getting introduced. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with the scope or the direction of the project, because everybody who had anything to say about that project that was involved in the initial is all on board. But when people above them come in, or too many stakeholders come in and want A, B, C, D, E, F, and G added, you don't have the same project. You can't have the same project. And if you try to adapt to that much of a shift, you can't make a viable project for your client. Yeah. And then that leads to you looking bad. There's nothing you can really do about that except try and knock it out of the park, even under these extreme duress situations. But knowing that that could be the problem actually allows you to go in and ask questions that might allow you to have a compromise, that might allow there to be some kind of give and take. And 90% of the time, it's political.
I think one thing that I really want to reiterate in all of this, in context to this, is memories are short. And we've said this before, right? Memories are short. Whatever conversations happen at the beginning, whatever conversations happen midway through, are completely forgotten if there is a complete shift internally with that company. Either management shifts, new employees, whatever that happens to be. If there is a new mandate that's been put down by, say, a new CEO or a new, VP of marketing or what have you, a whole new initiative, and everything that is being worked on currently and in the future has to go in a new direction, and you have gotten through a certain section of a project, there have to be some very real conversations very quickly, because what's happening on the inside that you're not privy to is that they're all looking for that material in the work that you're doing, and it's not there because guess what? It wasn't part of the original scope. It wasn't a part of the original messaging that you were doing. And suddenly you're the one under the spotlight. And, it's like those old detective shows where the light bulb is kind of swinging and you're the one sitting in the seat. But they're looking to you and saying, why isn't this here? And it's like, oh, that wasn't part of the original conversation, the original scope. So I think it's important to, as we get into talking about how to reframe all of this and how to really protect yourself against it, there's a reason why people have certain processes and systems in place. It's because of this, to protect themselves. So that was one of the things that I know has happened in the past, where suddenly there is a massive shift in not only the staff, but the direction of a mission, of a vision for a company, or the messaging and all that. And if you're midway in a project, that could be disaster.
And I want to put a fine point to this. You will get thrown under the bus. And I'll relate a story of ours as we shift over, but you will get thrown under the bus. Yeah. And if there's somebody who is not afraid of their job or the position above them that's suddenly changing this, you will have somebody who will have your back, but only when it comes to a head. This happened to us, actually. I'll use this as an example. We were working on a project for a year, and it involved multiple states, multiple locations, multiple departments. Great communication throughout the project. It was a wonderful experience.
Great feedback too.
Great feedback. And
Yeah.
what ended up happening was somebody brand new overseeing this endeavor comes in. And suddenly you have a new person who's not a stakeholder in the original. You have a new directive being given to them. So suddenly you have a project that's going left when this one needs to go right, or up when it needs to go down, either which way. And suddenly the feedback we were getting not only dropped off, we were getting nothing. We were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. We waited so long and kept, trying to get some information until finally the project was out of contract, and the company called us out on that, and it wasn't our fault. Now, that said, in good faith, we finished the project. We made some changes because we could. It wasn't near the direction they now suddenly wanted to be in. And we parted ways. And it was a really horrible situation because you feel like you let somebody down, even though you didn't.
Yeah.
But there was not an honest conversation. The honest conversation was, hey, it's a brand new direction. And then this doesn't really fit that direction. And that would have been a really nice place to say, okay, let's sit down at the table and see if there's anything we can salvage, or do we just need to part ways in an economically beneficial way for both of us?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought this particular one up because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. They use the video, by the way. It is actively being used, and it's a great piece. And I think a lot about what are some of the things that led to this particular person wanting to delay. And I think that the nature of our business, the nature of our industry, and how things typically work in other places maybe, is that everything is to the letter of the law in terms of, well, it's this many hours of shooting, it's this many hours of editing, it's this many, it's that kind of like quantified amount of everything. And what's funny is the solution to this was the simple addition of one interview and a little bit of B-roll. That was the solution, which we gladly did. And
here, I have to qualify.
Yeah. Yes.
It was the solution, but it was not a wholesale redirection. And I need to expressly say that because they wanted a wholesale redirection.
Yeah.
And when we were sitting in a meeting together, I think you'll remember this, why didn't you get A, B, and C? And one of the people who was there at the time kept their mouth totally closed. And I brought up the point, well, I even have it here. In your original documentation, we were not allowed to do A, B, and C. You actually expressly forbid that. And that person spoke up and said, they're absolutely correct about that.
Yeah.
So this desire for wholesale change of direction couldn't happen because we don't have that material. But what we did say was, we know where you want to aim. So let us aim this in that direction. Let us get this and work with that and steer it in the direction you want. It's not going to be the video project you are now imagining, because that wasn't what we imagined originally. But what it will do is it will sidle up to everything else you're trying to do to push everything in that direction.
That's a great way to qualify what the solution was, because you're absolutely right. It's that we took it and were able to it's almost be creative problem solvers and say, hey, here's a solution and here's how we can do this. And it turned out to be something pretty great that they ended up using.
It's a fantastic piece. What I didn't enjoy was being thrown under the bus, but we didn't ever make them feel that they had done a horrible thing to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the secret too. If you're going to do the work, you do the work. If you're going to try to salvage something, you try to salvage something. You don't hold back. You don't hold grudges. You just keep moving on. What
Yeah.
it did do, though, was teach us and helped us to reframe how to handle this situation in the future. And I think we
Yeah.
can get to
Yeah.
that. I think we can get to how we would take a project like that and say, okay, red flag, red flag, red flag. Now
Yeah.
let's glide
Yeah.
out from under this.
So, when we talk about some of the solutions for this and the reframing of this type of situation to get out on the other side so that everyone wins, everyone comes out really well with this. I think it begins with a couple of things, right? There's the process and the systems that you have in place and how you treat even the very first interaction that is coming to you. It could be an email. It could be a discovery call, right? You're actually on a Zoom with each other. There are things that you should be looking for right at the beginning. Is the email simply stating, we need a video and we got to have it done by June? Or, they give you some random date or something, or say, we're hoping to do this by, fall. Is that all it is? Or are they giving you a fairly detailed, even if there isn't like a budget or whatever, but at least they're telling you, here's what we're looking to achieve. That is sort of a first, it kind of starts to tell you what kind of pressure are they on their side?
Mm-hmm.
How organized are they? It's a lot of things like that. So really looking at that. On the call itself, what's the chemistry like? Are you feeling that you're vibing with this person? Is there like, yeah, I believe in these guys. I like their mission. I like how I could tell that they're passionate about what they do, or is it a very cold conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people can be shy. They can be kind of guarded for whatever reason. So don't use that as a reason to say no to something, but just keep it in the back of your mind and see what the next conversation is like and see if they start to warm up to you or if things get a little easier. If they don't, maybe it's not a good fit. But if it does, then it's obviously they're just, trying to navigate and vet the right partners in this. So that's okay. But it starts kind of right at the beginning. The next part is that there are things in the communication chain that you need to take on yourself to make sure that you're getting what you need. I think one of the biggest lessons, Brian, that we've learned is we ask a lot more questions before we even start a project. And let's say there are, I don't know, 3 or 4 people on an email chain, and maybe one is, a VP or president or CEO or something like that, someone in that higher end sort of executive side, and then the others are maybe managers, or they could be, marketing specialists or something like that. We'll have all of the conversations with the group, but many times we'll reach out directly to one of the executives and we'll ask certain questions that we don't know if the others are privy to. And we say, look, we're going to ask you some questions that are, you trust us. We have an NDA with you, but we're going to ask questions that don't go any further than right here. And then that's where we ask questions about where is the company headed? What is the goal of this? Is it to increase sales? I was like, are you looking to position your company to sell it? Are you, are you, all of these things that we start to ask, are there anticipated changes in management or staff during the time of our project? We ask a lot of questions to get us off on the right foot. Doesn't mean you're going to avoid it completely, but at least you have a fighting chance of understanding what could be coming. So that from a first blush is a good one. Systems are a big one, and communication are the big ones. And I would even say over communication, right, Brian?
Yeah. Yes. And the politics that you're talking about, who to talk to and why and how, we always give this is why we need to know. We always give that. Like, we need to know if you're planning on this, even if it's 2 years down the road, are you planning on that? They see that, they understand we know business. And that's really what this business is about. Our business is about knowing business. Their business is about knowing their business. And it does help, but there's also a secondary tone to all this, which is you've got to be able to keep your lines of communication straight. There have been times where people have use the unofficial chain to talk with us and change direction. That should be on a group chat. It's the politics and the things that maybe everybody doesn't need to know in the chain that should come to you directly and be kept that way. But there have been times where we've gotten two different directives from two different people and they need to be blended back together. So even being aware that how those different communications and what I'll call the backdoor chain of command works, you need to be up on it, and you need to understand what needs to be a group all or referred back to a group all answer, and what really needs to be kept, basically above board but to the side and not shared with everybody and everything. So
I think
it works both ways.
Yeah, and I think keeping in mind that the things that you say to one person will never be delivered the way you said it. They're going to paraphrase what you've said. They're going to leave out whole chunks of things, maybe some nuanced explanations of things. So you have to really kind of understand communication and how the telephone game and how the telephone game works from one person to the next.
And my back channels can be helpful and hurtful.
Correct. Yes. So I think a lot of times it's funny because a lot of times we will, when we talk to like high school students who are looking for courses to take in college, psychology is one of the courses that we say you should take a good basic psychology and understand human relationships and that kind of thing because it's important. We have to understand a lot of times, there's the phrase that I forget where I heard it first, but it's this idea it's all your fault, right? It's all our fault. And if you come to it with that spirit, it's not a negative thing, actually. It's actually a very positive thing because you're looking at it going, all right, what are the places where we could fall flat on this? From the time they first contact us to the time we deliver the project. And if you're looking at those places like, oh, maybe this is a spot where it could go wrong. Well, what can you do to mitigate that? And sometimes it's literally that extra email that can get sent. It's like, hey, just want to send you an update on where we are. In the absence of communications, the imaginations of your clients will run wild. They will think that there's chaos at your studio or that I don't know, make up whatever story you want in there. But in the absence of communication, they will fill in the blanks, and you have to get to it before they can fill in those blanks. The other side of it is understand that your clients have some very real pressures against them. It's easy for us to sort of look at these red flags and all kind of rally and say like, clients, am I right? That kind of thing. But we also have to understand that there is a lot at stake for them. And there are a lot of pressures that we have absolutely no idea of. And the bigger the organization, sometimes the worse it can be. They're fighting, Brian, you used the word survival. They're fighting for their survival in their company every single day. So constantly remember that we're in service to them and ask yourself the question, how can we make their lives easier and how can we make their lives better? I've had a lot of things that I've had to work on myself in terms of how I approach certain things and what is truly important in a project. Because early on, maybe I wasn't seeing it that way. And now you flip it and it changes things. You have to be seen as someone who really understands them and cares about them too. Some things are out of your control, but if it's a good relationship, and even the ones with new people coming in, just constantly serve and say, how can I make your life easier right now coming into the middle of a project, if they're open to it.
So there's a couple of things that can easily get your mind working. First of all, the red flag should be red flags. It shows that there's a mismatch of something.
Yeah.
It's up to you to determine why. If you have a project that goes along and then suddenly shifts and changes and suddenly the red flags are popping up and it's scope creep or direction creep, feel free to send out an addendum to the contract and make sure that it goes to the billing department as well with new dates on it, because that will protect you from having them throw you under the bus at the end. Purposefully or not, it doesn't matter. When you're looking for someone to blame, it's much easier to blame somebody outside of a company than it is inside of the company. And even knowing that kind of allows you to shake hands a lot easier with somebody.
Yeah.
That said, there have been times where I'm sure we are red flags to others. And the best we can do is, after making a legitimate mistake or miscalculation, is to own it. I don't like disappointing people. And I don't like it when people disappoint me. And I want to constantly work on myself and work on my delivery and work on my communication skills. I tend to be the more blunt one, and it works sometimes with us, because I'm blunt, but I'm gentle in bluntness. Like, I can go in and say, like, look, so if this is what this is about, we can help, but we need to be aware of it. So it's a blunt, straightforward, but we usually get response. And I remember one where we walked in, it's like, if this is about saving your jobs because they're funded via grants, let us know that. And they're all kind of like,
I remember that.
it's okay. I mean, if you're going to be a partner, be a partner. Let the red flag guide you. Don't let the red flag terrify you. If the red flag terrifies you, then the best you can do is bail out as quickly as possible. It's not a good fit. And if you can't see how to fix it or can't understand where it's coming from, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your client or potential client to just get out of there and say, you know what, this is not going to work. To date, I don't think we have seen, there may have been one project where we just said, you know what, this is probably not going to work between us. And it was because of constant shifting and pivoting. And I don't remember if we got through that project or whether we walked away, but it was a very open, and that was the thing, open. Just be open and understand that there's more out there than you are even aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at sort of that reframe, and we can sort of summarize, red flags they show up right many times right from the beginning. So be open when you're having that very first interaction, whether it's an email, whether it's a call, whether it's a Zoom. Look for the small things that say that there is something off here. It could be the person's mood that day. It could be how you're interacting with each other. Sometimes it's good, but then sometimes you'll notice there's an edge to it. Doesn't mean it's a definitive, but just means just keep an eye on it. And then throughout, what is the communication that you're providing to your customers throughout a project? And if you think you're communicating enough, double it, over communicate. It's better to have them say, can you back off a little, than to have them asking where something, where we stand or what's an update or that. Never make it to the point where they never really have to, that's the ideal, right? Is that they never actually have to ask a question because you've over communicated enough with them.
There's one piece I'd like to add on to that.
Go for it, please.
Early on, many years ago, before COVID, we got in the habit of saying, what is the best way to communicate with you? Not what's the best email. What's the best way to communicate? Some people love texts. Some people love email. Some people love phone calls. I like the phone call. It's me personally. But everybody is different. Meet them where they're at. If you want to reduce the flags popping up, it's the best way to do it. And then if there's 12 people on the team and each one has a different way of communication, that's on you. You've got to figure that out. And it doesn't mean you can't send an email to everybody, but it means that the group email is one thing and you back it up with the phone call, the text, if you're on a Slack, whatever it is, you follow it up in a secondary phase, which is really the first phase, the first need. You follow it up in a secondary way because the secondary way may be the first way for many of these people that they want to be communicated to. So the email always goes out, but to that you add the individual communication touch points. Yeah,
there's like 5 different generations in the workforce today. Good luck with that one, right? It's it's everywhere. So ultimately, the thing that you're going to want in place, the ultimate systems, right, are sort of these project management systems where everyone, the client and you, are both in the same space. It's what, Slack has sort of promised to be, but there are project management platforms that you can do where even if it's something simple that you set up in Google, in a Google Drive of some kind, something makeshift, something that everyone can check in on and see just regular activity each day. That's a good way to sort of start to mitigate some of this. Um, Really understanding, having the communication on the other side, not just about a project, but about where they're at. Hey, the project's moving along. We just sent you that update. I was like, but I just wanted to see how the company's doing. Is there any news that has happened within the company? Is there anything new coming up or anything like that? We just want to, stay up to date with it. Sometimes that can happen during maybe a project call that's going on, something
Mm-hmm.
scheduled, but you're kind of shooting the shit anyway. So, ask some questions where you're kind of pulling some information out and that sort of thing. And then, accountability, Brian, touch on this. Touch on that shift in accountability.
Own it. Own it. Keep owning it. Re-own it. Own it again. Own it a third time. Own it. Just keep. You have to. In the end, you've contracted. In the end, you're doing the work. In the end, if they shift, see what you can do to pivot. You can hold them accountable too, saying, hey, this is out of the scope of our original project.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like us to proceed? Do you want us to make an amendment to the contract? Do you want us to finish out this project, start something new? But understanding that moment and how it relates to the project that is almost done and the project you're looking toward is critical. You can't walk in there. If somebody makes it clear that they're there for the lowest price, well, that's my red flag. But but if that's the case, then that's the case. You can't keep giving them overages and tell them then what the problem is. Well, we can't keep it at this cost if there's the scope creep that you've just announced. So we have to either reevaluate, or that's dual ownership. You're owning it, but you're also explaining why you're owning it at that moment and why they need to own their end of it. It's not disrespectful as long as you give them the why that this is happening. So it's about extreme ownership. It's about extreme accountability. It's about taking a moment and allowing yourself to basically say, this is what I'm responsible for. And yes, I can make the shift. Yes, I can make the shift within the scope of the project, or I can't make the shift in the scope of the project, but here's how we can make the shift. How would you like to proceed?
Yeah,
Put it, but
I love that.
you own it, but you put it back on them as well to own their portion of it. You can't
Yeah,
be thrown out if you're moving towards something.
yeah, and I think sometimes we're afraid to push back, and all of a sudden something comes out of the blue, and it's like, whoa. And sometimes, especially if you're new to the business or you haven't been in business for very long, sometimes your first instinct is to like, well, yeah, I need this project, and I want to do right by, I want to have this client have a really glowing recommendation of me, and so you just literally just say yes, and you just do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to get through the project. Where what might be more productive is to ask a question along with your statement of this is beyond the original scope. And instead of just really focusing on the fact that it's beyond the scope, ask that one follow-up question. What has changed internally? What is the new pressure? What is the pressure that's coming down that is making this shift necessary? Because once they're able to provide that to you, then your problem solving and your creativity can go hog wild and come up with solutions that they might think it's a monumental shift. Sometimes it might just be a simple one that, depending on where you are in a project, it might be a simple shift to make something that works within the context of what you've already done. But you have to be open to those conversations and understand that. And I think one of the big things, just to wrap up this conversation, I love this topic, is why this mattered to us. Why was it important for us to really get a handle on this? And this mattered to our survival. And the biggest takeaway for us is that we ultimately are held accountable for the actions of others. We are held accountable. And so on the most negative side, people, you are the easy one to shine that spotlight on. from the best of intentions, it's just the nature of, if someone is saying, oh, video, 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 and you're the video provider, it's just natural, that's where it all points in. Regardless of what the intent is, it's on you. And so we're held accountable for it. So it's on us as professionals to understand that from the very, very beginning through the entire process. And it just comes down to, how can we serve them best? How can we make their lives easier through this process and make this just a winning project all the way around? And I can't think of anywhere else to take it, Brian, because I think we've packed this one in.
I think so. Thankfully for us, this reframe.
Here, I'll re-cue you.
No, I got it.
All right.
Thankfully for us, the reframe came in a different fashion. The reframe was how we did business prior to any of this. So we are prepared when there's a pivot. We're not prepared for a wholesale change. You can't make Star Wars out of the cutting room floor leftovers from the Godfather. It just doesn't work. But you can definitely change each one within their genre. And, that's it. We were prepped. We were prepped to be able to handle these red flags. However, with each iteration, we learned so much more about the better way to handle it and the better way and the better way. And we're going to try and share as much of that as we can.
And maybe on the next episode, we're going to have to add some lightsabers to a scene in The Godfather now. I think that would be pretty hilarious. Anyway,
it can be done.
But thanks everyone for being on here. This is a touchy subject, and I know that many have gone through this. Maybe you're going through this right now. Share a story down below. Is there something that you're going through, or a solution that you've found to the problem? Share that with everyone. And thanks for being here. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. So long.
Stay safe. Stay healthy.